Political crisis began with the election of President Nicolás Maduro because of the very slim margin he was elected, and because it was a very unfair election. In Venezuela, the elections are very unfair, but in the case of Hugo Chavez, he would win on 10, 15 points difference with the opposition. But at the 14th of April, Nicolás Maduro won with 1.5. So his problems began there because he was not able to show that he was the real leader of Chavismo without Chavez to his people, and he did not convince either that he had won fairly the election of 14th of April. So I think with up and downs, what we have been living is a political crisis that with the cycle of protests that began in February has worsened. And of course, it combines now with the economic crisis and the social problems that we have. But I think it is fair to say that a good part of the weight has to do with the disappearance of the charismatic leader, of the populist charismatic leader. When this happens, you can't transfer that charismatic leadership to somebody else. But you have to work out some kind of regime that can bring stability. And that Max Weber, that was the great the great author that wrote about this, said that probably you can go either to a legal kind of regime and try to obey the law and the laws, which doesn't happen when you have a charismatic leader, because he is above the law and he's above the Constitution and the legality. Or you can go into a traditional kind of regime, a patrimonial kind of regime, where you say, I am the successor, I'm the heir of the charismatic leader, and you try to open a traditional regime where being loyal and devoted to the leader and to try to develop the legacy, what you think the legacy of the leader was. And I think that has been the effort of Chavismo with Nicolás Maduro to try to bring, to fulfill the void that Chavez left with a kind of traditional patrimonial regime that is not working. I think it has big flaws. It's not working. So what has happened is that he has to more and more use repression, militarization of the regime. Yes, of course. I think yes. I mean, these are this is what Chavez sowed in the economy. There was no regard for the economy. This is an oil country, so Chavez always thought that, as many other politicians before him, that oil will resolve all the problems and that it's endlessly the prosperity, the boom that happens with the oil, because it's a very strategic necessity for the world. So all the problems, I would say, were created or with Chavez or before Chavez, because this is an economic and social situation of crisis that is even before him and that he did not resolve, and that's why it has become worse. But I do think that there is a difference, having said that, because I think with Chavez, the clumsiness of the solutions that Nicolás Maduro has given to the situation, I have my doubts. Of course, Chavez is dead, you don't know, but I have my doubts that he would have coped with the situation this way. For example, Chavez was very careful with protest and with violence. And yet now we have a toll death of 40 deaf people in the street protest. I think Chavez would have not let that go so far in the repression. And I think he probably also would have understood the idea of having to do dialogues or some kind of approach to the opposition before, and not how Nicolás Maduro tends, because I would say he's not a very good politician. He was accustomed to obey orders and not take decisions, that he tries in a way to imitate Chavez. And so he says, what does Chavez would have done? Oh, he would have polarized. He would have said no dialogue. He would have talked stark to the entrepreneur, and that's what he has been doing. But it is not working for him. But to take him out of that is very difficult because he hasn't shown what kind of a politician he is. He just imitates his leader, and that makes the situation very difficult to get. Yes, I think this is not a short timing. I think the most important thing that can happen after the opening of the space is that a real political dialogue can happen that would help us build some kind, again, the institutions to bring back plurality and democracy in Venezuela. Because right now, all the public powers are controlled by the executive. The National Assembly, they don't do the laws, the executive does the laws. The judicial power, with a call, the sentence goes to the government doesn't lose any demand, any trial. The ombudsman defends the government. The general attorney defends the government. She says, for example, that Leopoldo López is a criminal. She said that 2 days ago. And the Voluntad Popular is a party that it's a criminal organization. And so I think the most important thing here right now is that the real dialogue can appear. Because right now it's important that the space appeared. But the dialogue hasn't appeared. What we saw was a talk of the points of view of both. Did they listen? We don't know. We have to see if they listened to something during this happening of 4 or 5 hours. But the idea is to recuperate the public power. So if you recuperate some of these public powers, you may be able to open then the road to a peaceful, a democratic way of resolving the political conflict. If not, we'll continue in violence and in street politics that is going to become more violent because you are not hearing them. You are not fulfilling the demands. And of course, we have so many problems that the government says first is the economic problem. But I think you can't resolve the economic problem if you don't open the road to begin to give recognition to half of the population that voted against you and that has representatives in the National Assembly that you don't let talk, that you don't give they're not in charge of any commission, and that in general the National Assembly doesn't do the laws. So I think the political dialogue is very important at this point, and then we will know if really we will be able to get out of this situation and begin to resolve our problems through a peaceful way.